There.
Hello, guys. I would like to welcome you guys to Counterpoints Podcast. My name is Malik Foster, and I'm joined by my lovely co-host and a few guests. Would you like to introduce yourselves?
Sure. My name is Ever Stevenson, of course, one of your other co-hosts.
And I am Samantha Adams. I am your third co-host, and today we are joined by two very, very beautiful women, very smart women, and they came to participate in our discussion. We have Kyle Brown, and we have returning with us also Adrianette Williams. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. You guys want to tell our viewers anything about you before we get started?
Oh, hailing from New Jersey, an attorney over here.
Jersey in the house.
Adrianette Williams. I'm originally from Pensacola, Florida. I came from Tampa, Florida to be here, so it's a pleasure. Always good to be among my people.
Absolutely. Well, today we have a good topic. This is actually going to be a segmented topic. Today we're talking about the plight of Black people. And the reason why it's segmented is because we're going to break it up between the plight of Black women, and then we are going to talk about the plight of Black men. That's going to be another episode. So you guys make sure you guys tap into that so you all can, hear what we have to say about that. But let's just go ahead and kick it off, right? A lot of times we hear about the plight of the Black man, but a lot of times we don't hear very much about the plight of the Black woman. You hear about, women empowerment and all this other stuff, but what about Black women, right? And so, I wanted to just start off by talking about the first things first. Whenever you think about, comparing what goes on with women versus what goes on with men, the very first thing you hear about is the pay gap. And so, when you talk about the pay gap, the wage gap, you hear a lot about how much money a woman makes compared to a man as it relates to that, to how much they make on average to $1. So let's say a white man makes $1, like on average $1, right? Or $100, whatever it is. When you talk about $1, women in general make somewhere around 82 cents, I think, on the dollar. But the Black woman makes way less than that. She makes about 62 cents on the dollar. And so I just wanted to go ahead and start off, kicking it off right there and let you guys go ahead and give your opinions about that. Everybody start at once.
Well, me personally, I'll just go ahead and jump on it real fast. I definitely think that it is indicative of something that we kind of talked about the other day, how sometimes when we receive certain things as far as benefits, if you will, or like when we kind of get in groups and we kind of group up like that, it doesn't necessarily help each other. Now I know you guys wondering, like, what do I mean by groups? What I'm saying is like when we look at each other, like look at it from sex wise, like gender wise, and we see like, white women and Black women versus, maybe say women of other races. A lot of times we kind of group them within the notion of saying like, okay, hey, here's women's rights, and you don't normally see that on the male side of the game, as far as like saying, oh, male rights, you know what I'm saying? So I think when we look at the struggle and the fight that women have had to get employed, to be able to be seen as equals in this world, to be able to have the ability to own property, to work, to do those things, I think it's a reflection of showing how when benefits are open to everyone, how, Black people in particular receive the lower level of that stick. And so like in case an example is when we look at how in this situation, women were able to get into the workplace, it seems as though Black women still are receiving a shorter end on that stick. And considering the fact that also, this is also one of the highest educated groups out of all demographics. So that's one of the also things that makes it look so challenging, is to say like, here's someone that's working to receive, education and receive qualifications and has those qualifications in droves, yet still aren't being able to receive the equal pay as either others as within their gender and or within their position as well.
Absolutely. Also too, the pay gap is also, something that you also see between women, right? Like there's white women, Hispanic women, Asian women, and Black women all make a different amount of money. You don't have equality or equity, equal equity or anybody getting the same thing as far as pay is concerned, even within the gender. And that right there is also an issue. Like when you talk about, equal pay and things like that, why is it not even equal amongst us? When you look at jobs and stuff, brunt of those blue collar jobs are women, Black women specifically, doing, food service and, cleaning and things like that. And also too, one thing that I thought about, when COVID-19 hit, women were affected more by COVID in the workforce than men, because when children had to stay home, a lot of women quit their jobs and had to go home and make sure that their kids were doing the online school and stuff like that. So, there's definitely a huge issue as it relates to that. And I think that it's just interesting when we fight for equity and equality and equal pay and all of that, a lot of times you get a lot of pushback, right? There's pushback from people saying, oh, you said you wanted equality and now you're getting treated this particular way. And it's like, no, we want a seat at the table. We want an even playing field. Do I think that we're all gonna be treated equally? No. I feel the same way about, as far as finding equality, full equality for women, I feel the same way about that as I do about that for Black people in general. Like, I don't think we're ever all gonna be 100% equal. I don't. Something drastic would have to happen in order for that to take place. But I personally don't see it, but I do think we can come close. But it's just tough when you watch so many disparities, not just outside of the group, of being a Black woman, but also being a woman. And then on top of that, that paired up against men as well. So it's just tough because Black women typically are at the bottom of the totem pole when it comes to pay.
I would agree with that. I mean, I have a colleague who is laterally positioned as me, who earns a higher income than me. I mean, she has like 1 or 2 more years of experience on her license, but I came in from a completely different standpoint because the work that I do, I had done both sides of the fence. So I can run a case from intake to jury verdict when she doesn't have that same experience, yet she is at a higher pay rate than me. Is she any less qualified? No, she's not any less qualified. But I think that when it comes to the wage gap, the people who are doing the hiring, like, we need to have a seat at the table, right? Because if we had a seat at the table, then we could say, well, maybe they don't have as much experience as so-and-so, but look at all the experience that they do, it's comparable, they should be paid at that same scale.
Yeah, I agree. Malik, do you have anything?
When it comes to the wage gap, I totally agree with what you guys are already saying. Sam definitely said a lot of my thoughts about when it comes to wage gap, there's a couple divides for Black women, right? Number one, you're Black, so there's that divide, and then you're a woman, that's another divide, right? So you're Black, so that means you're automatically gonna not get the same as your white counterparts, for example, or the majority of people, or the majority of the owners who own these corporations tend to be white, or another race, right, that Black women work for. That's who employs them, right? So I think that's part of the problem, because when we own our own businesses and employ our own people, it tends to be a better situation, right? You tend to get a higher, better comparative rate at these businesses as compared to white corporations or other group run corporations. So I think that's part of the problem. Like, there's less ownership of these businesses that women want to work at, that do these service-based jobs that most women do, right? That you mentioned earlier, Sam, the blue collar jobs. So that's an issue. Another issue is that I think that white women, they try to gather other groups of women along to get the equal pay that they want, the 1-to-1 ratio, against white men, but they're as equal as it's ever been, right? They get what, 95 cents to $1, right? There was an article, I want to say, was it the Washington Post that posted it? But there's an article that basically mentioned that the gender gap, the wage gap is shortening, and especially for white women, right? They get 95 cents to $1. That's almost equal, right? That's about probably as good as it's going to get. Maybe it'll get up to like 98 cents or something to every dollar. I don't think it'll ever be equal unless more women start running these corporations and businesses, and in a ownership and control standpoint. But I mean, I say all that to say that Black women in this case, they're getting like what, 64 cents to $1 or whatever. Like they're getting like 30 cents less. Sam mentioned like 60 cents or something like that. So they're getting like 30 cents less than what their white counterparts are getting. So there's even a wage gap within the gender, right, based off of race. So it all goes back to race, right? You can be a Black woman. There's issues with you being a woman, right? But there's also issues with you being specifically a Black woman, and that's what you have to look at. Like, hey, we're women, but we're not all in this together, because we don't even get what the white women get, right? In terms of the wages and stuff like that. So you have to kind of take a look at it from a standpoint like you're on your own as a Black woman, I think, and not try to join some of these other movements that white women are promoting to better their situation, and using your plight and the atrocities that happen specifically to Black women to boost what's going on with them.
I think I got some pushback for that though, Malik. The reason why is because that's almost impossible to have your own, as a Black person, it's almost impossible to have your own movement and another minority not be able to benefit from it in this country. Every time there's a movement in this country for Black people, no matter what it is, other people benefit. When you talk about voting rights, white women, all women were able to benefit from that. No matter if they were Black, white, Hispanic, or Asian, it didn't matter, because women didn't have the right to vote. When you talk about any type of civil rights things that we've had as a movement, other groups have been able to benefit, such as the LGBTQI plus community. All these different communities are able to benefit from the things that we as Black folks work hard for as Black folks. It doesn't mean that they don't deserve or need or should get, equality as well. It's just that that work comes from Black folks trying to get it, and then other people benefit from it. So it's almost like, well, why not jump on their bandwagon? They jump on ours. You know what I'm saying? Like, we got to be able to try to get in when we fit in one way or another, because if we just do this on our own, somebody else is going to be able to benefit. Somebody else is going to be able to benefit. It's how it always works. That's my opinion. Adrienne, you've been quiet over there. Do you have anything you want to say?
I was patiently waiting my turn.
Oh, well, can I respond to what you said real quick, Sam? I was going to say that, well, I mean, they do it, right? They exclude us from their benefits, right? If there's programs specifically for LGBTQ people or other minority groups, they exclude us, our people. So it's just the same way we're doing here, right? The same thing we're doing, except that Black women have specific things that happen to them, so they need those specific benefits, right? So there's specific issues that are specific to Black women, so they need to fix those problems specifically. So Asian women may not have this, they don't have the same problems. White women for sure don't have the same problems, even within the wage gap problem. I mean, I'm sure Black women would be ecstatic for 95 cents to every dollar that a man makes. They would still have a little bit complaints about it, but they'd be ecstatic. But white women are still, pushing the issue and trying to get it 1-to-1 as well. So I think Black women would do the same thing, but I still think Black women would be happier with the 95 cents to $1 compared to what they have right now, which is 60 something, 64, 62 cents, around that range per dollar per men, right? So I think, Black women, excluding other groups, helps them to achieve the goals that they need to achieve to better improve their group, right? So I think that's what it's about. Like, you got to learn that, okay, you're a Black woman, but you can't just isolate yourself saying, hey, we're all women, so we're all in this together, which isn't the truth, right? Because all men aren't going to say, hey, we're all men, so we're all in this together. Men don't do that, right? So
And also don't have those.
They don't have to do that.
but
Right.
I'm just saying, men don't do that. But I just think women should take a similar approach. That's just all I'm thinking.
I think for me, I'm gonna go back to the topic of just the wage gap itself. First of all, I'm gonna be happy when women get paid on the same level as a white male counterpart. If I do the same job as you, I deserve the same pay as you. So I'm not gonna be happy with 95, 99.9, but I'm different because I'm the girl who, when I found out that one of my coworkers early on in my career was making more money than me, I went to HR and I confronted everybody. I might have been all of 22. And what they did was they actually lowered his pay and raised mine so that we made the same amount of money. He was upset about it. I don't care, because here's the thing. I'm doing most of the work and you got paid more money than me. And so I learned early on in my career to like speak up, because if you don't say something, then people are going to treat you like they treat you. And work is a business. These people are trying to get as much work out of you as possible for the least amount of money. That's kind of how you have to approach it. And so what really helped me take it to another step is I read during the pandemic a book called The Memo. And it was like the things that Black women should know as they move up in the workplace. And it was a really, really good book for me. One of the things they talked about is that we are taught as a culture not to discuss our salary. So then how do I know when I go into a room how much to ask for if I don't like, so I'm going to know how much Mikal makes because Mikal's a lawyer with kind of almost the same experience. I'm going to know how much Sam makes. And so like, these are things that you need to know. And these are things that we should discuss among each other. I don't know why we so secret about how much money we make. It's not a secret. So I will ask you, how much money do you make, or how much do they offer you? Okay, this year, my goal is to up my salary by this much money. And it's bode me well, because I've made probably the most money in the last couple of years than I've ever made in my life, just because I'm not happy. I'm never going to be happy with the amount of money you're paying me. I want more. I'm always going to want more. And I think that we really need to start discussing it. And if you at a company where they say, oh, you got to keep the your salary, not to discuss it. Well,
Yep, I think she froze there. I think she froze. So I think where she's going with that is, well, why not, right? Why not be able
technical issues here?
Yeah, while Everett fixes that, I'll try to see if I can fill in the gap.
Yeah, it might be a little minute real fast before we Adrian answers. She's gonna pop back up in just a second. But what I was gonna say though too was that to piggyback off of what she was saying earlier, I think that's important. And one thing I want to also talk about that too is I guess would be like the art of negotiation. Making sure that, like, when we go into those settings for employment, that, to her point that she made as well, that we kind of know what those ranges are that we're looking to have. And then we also then can we know what those ranges are that we need to be asking for employment, but then also then we know too what it is that needs to be done in regards to how much we should be asking for, or how much we should be asking for, or not only just that, but what the starting rate is and how much we should be negotiating for that. I think when we sit back and we get a chance to sit down and look at those factors, that's going to help us on the front end to making sure that, you know what I'm saying, when you come in the door, that you're receiving something that you're supposed to be receiving. And then I also think that too, that also goes towards one of the statements that she made too, having those conversations. I don't know if you guys remember where recently they had a like a Twitter conversation that they used, and it talked about how one young lady had applied for a job and in the tech space, and I believe like the interviewee offered her at the rate that she asked for, even though she had the ability to offer the lady more money. And then there's a quote where there's another situation where there's the same type of situation where another young lady was applying for a job. And both of these situations include, Black women in a hiring standpoint, and they include Black women in the application standpoint. From then, both of them had, like, on the second situation, another young lady kind of paused the interview, reached out to the girl, told her, hey, listen, you're selling yourself short. This is what the opportunity is available for. This is what you should be looking for in this market. Don't do yourself that disservice. And I think those are the type of things that we need to like have as far as conversations, because again, one lady took the time to take somebody, pull them to the side, give them a little game out, let them know, hey, baby, you shooting yourself a little too low, keep going. Where another woman felt like what we call like the gatekeeper, who felt like, oh, well, I'm doing my job of service. I'm getting them to get the worker at a rate that's lower than approved. So now my metrics look, great because, hey, I'm hiring people and I'm not giving them, max amount of money, right? Like I'm getting them for as low as possible. And I think that's type of stuff that we need to like kind of work on when we talk about, I know we're going to talk about that a little bit later, within the unity within each other, and to the point that Adrienne was just making sure that we have that information included.
Yeah, I was going to say, when Adrienne was like saying that she didn't know why, I mean, I know that was a rhetorical question, but money is taboo in most cultures when you're talking about how much money you actually have and how much you make. Maybe not necessarily, people know the base of certain jobs. Like you can look that up. Okay, yeah, starting out, this is about how much money you think you should be getting. A lot of people don't do that research. And I think one of the main reasons why they say, hey, don't tell anybody how much you make is for that reason. So they can continue to do that gatekeeping that you're talking about, E. Also, too, because, it puts people in a position to, when you're looking at inflation, it leaves more room, and that money goes somewhere. Somebody gets that money, right? They typically don't hire another person, but that money does go in somebody's pocket. And so it's important to not just, make sure you're asking for, what's comparable to other people. You also got to know your worth and your value, right? Because like, look at the situation that Mikhail talked about. She knew her value. She found out that somebody else who has an equal value to her was making more than her. So that showed her, look, I need to be getting paid more money, because if you're going to be paying her more money, then our pay needs to be the same, because we do the same work, if not me doing more. Because that typically happens. Black women typically do more work. And so they get frustrated when they get paid less for more work. And I think that it's important. Also too, with the job opportunities, right? Job opportunities don't always come the same way for Black women as they do for other people, because there's a lot of nepotism involved.
Hey, Sam, can I cut you off for 1 second?
Yeah,
Because
sure,
I want to
go right
ask the
ahead.
ladies a question here, because based off of what Adrienne has said, right? She had said that, okay, the man who was making more money than her, they brought his wage down to bring her wage to equal his. Do y'all think that would be right if, like, say, if a woman was making this much money and they brought her wage down to equal it to a man?
I
I
honestly
think that process was a fair process, because I don't know. I'm kind of like debating it in my head.
I think that what they should have done was leave his pay where it was and brought Adrienne's pay to what his was.
But they may not have had the money in the budget for that, right? So I don't know.
That's not her problem.
Well, right. I mean,
I'm just saying the reason why they probably did it the way they did it.
I mean, that might be why they did it, but I don't necessarily agree with the fact that they did it. You see what I'm saying? I think that what they should have done for Adrienne was bring her pay up to his, and they needed to figure out where that extra money was going to come from, because it just doesn't make sense to lower that person's pay. Because imagine, if it doesn't matter if you're a man or woman, you're getting a paycheck for a certain amount of money, and they're telling you, oh no, we're going to pay you less now.
Just to help somebody else? Like, you're going to be like,
not
what?
help somebody else, because we shortchange somebody else. Because that's not to help Adrienne.
I mean,
she's
both
doing
help, shortchange. Yeah. Basically, like you're subtracting from me to right a wrong that you originally made.
That's not even his fault.
Yeah, it's not my fault that you decided to pay me more than her, right? That's a company issue, a corporation issue, or whatever. So
Right.
I don't know.
Okay,
I
y'all,
was
I'm
just
back.
debating that in my head.
I mean, honestly, I feel like that's a you problem, not a me problem. Quite
Right,
frankly, if I was in that position, the fact that they lower his pay, like, yeah, that's unfortunate for him, but that's not my problem. That's his problem.
Well, I mean, that's a company problem, right? Like, of course, it's his problem, but that's a company problem that they didn't allocate the proper funds. If that was the case, or two, they should have just made the pay fair. Like, hey, this is if you're doing this job, you get X amount of money in terms of salary, and this is how you increase your salary every year. Just have it blatantly outlined in your employee handbook or company policies, and you can avoid these issues if you're following those policies to the T.
But they're not going to do that because, again, that takes away from the opportunity for somebody to be able to, have someone working on a job for, you know what I'm saying, a pay rate that's advantageous for the employer. So that's why they're going to say, pay based on qualifications or something like that, based on experience. So I think that's wishful thinking. And some companies do, though. They'll have like a price point or pay range, but I think that's also a great interview question. What is the pay, what's the approval rate for, this position? How much do you guys have budgeted for this position? Because that, can help you kind of understand where you need to start your negotiation and as far as asking, for what type of pay for that skill. Because maybe they just don't have that budget for you, and you might have to make a decision to go in a different direction.
Yeah, and I have done that before, and that was one of the things I was saying. You need to know what the salary is, and this is the other thing. I don't just reach out to Black people. I got offered for a job, and I looked through LinkedIn for anybody who had worked in that company. I found somebody who went to the same undergraduate school as me. I emailed that. I found their phone number on the company website. I called them and left a message, and I was like, hey, I went to your same school. They offering me this position. I just want to talk to you about, I just want to do an informational interview, see how you like the company. I didn't say I wanted to, know how much I was going to get paid, but I did say I want to learn more about the company. And it was a white guy, and he reached out to me, and he gave me the whole game. He told me that they were moving the position from New York to Tampa in an interest to try to lower the amount of money they would pay. But I knew in New York they were paying $120, and in Tampa they were going to pay $90. However, it was the same amount of work. And if you look at the cost of living in Tampa, as soon as they moved to Tampa, we're almost equal.
Because that $120 comes down to like 80.
Right. Well, no. Tampa, it's the fastest growing city. So my rent went up by, I believe, $350 within 1 year. And so when you talk about, paying $2,000 for a 2-1, like you talking about New York prices right now. And so you should be, your pay at that point should be right on topic with what they were doing. And plus it was a job where they wanted you to be on call 24 hours a day. And I will be traveling between China, Paris, New York, and Tampa. And then they wanted to pay you $90,000. No, thank you.
And it's not even $1,000 take home after taxes, that comes down.
Right. But that was a conversation. I reached out to someone. And so we have to be our biggest advocates is what I'm saying. I'm not waiting for a movement to do it for me, but I have learned and gained a lot of these skills from Black women who had conferences, who had summits, who had meetups, who taught me these skills. So I think that's one of the things that we can do. But when it really comes down to your pay, that's personal. And you got to make that personal. We're not working for free. I don't want to work. You need to pay me the most amount of money.
Yeah, and you really have to do the research. Another good website for just looking at positions that are comparable in the same field is glassceiling.com, right? Because they have the different positions on there and they list what the salaries are. And then like Adrienne said, just talk to people. I mean, she and I have had conversations in past and switching jobs in terms of what a position should be worth. And you should always overestimate your worth because that's the only way you're going to have that gap to do those negotiations.
Yep, that's exactly what I was getting ready to say. Like, earlier, when Mikhail said, that's not a me problem, that's a you problem. And Malik said, that's the problem with, that's a business problem. No, that's a company problem. And that's the problem of the man whose, salary got dropped in the case that happened with Adrienne. That's not Adrienne's problem. Not a problem, not a fault. they had to fix it. They had to right or wrong, and they needed to figure that out. You know what I mean? And so knowing how much the pay range is, like E has suggested, and then ask for a little bit more. Doesn't hurt to do that. That's part of negotiating, right? When you negotiate, you always ask for more than what you want. So when you land on what you want, you landed on.
The other part of the negotiation for salary is that you need to be willing to leave. And I had one of my friends who does really well with finding better jobs told me this. On average, we make 73% of a raise when we stay at the same position. And when you change jobs, you usually get a 20% increase because you're not going to leave unless they're paying you more, right? So over the span of 5, 10, 15 years, you staying at the same company versus you looking for a new job every 2 to 3 years is going to put you at an exponentially higher rate. So you got to be willing to leave. And I ask for my money, and if you don't pay me, I'm not going to get an attitude. I'm going to come in and I'm going to do my job. But just know that I'm on my way out the door because it's not personal. And so we really have to be more mobile. We need not be loyal to a company. If 2008 taught us anything, is that companies are going to always do what's best for them. We saw our parents and our uncles and aunts and our cousins who had worked for these companies for their whole life get laid off in the interest of making sure the company made it. So we got to do the same thing with the companies. We need to lay them off to ensure that we make the most money that we can.
Right. That also happened during the pandemic, right? Like you got to do what's going to work for you, what's going to help you, what's going to benefit you. And, you know, like Adrian that was alluding to, like these people, our families, you know, companies used to be loyal to their employees. You know, they would give pensions and they would give all of these perks and things like that. They don't do that anymore. Like you might find that few and far in between in some industries, but for the most part, it's not going to happen. Companies are not, businesses are not typically loyal to their employees. So, you know, you have to be loyal to yourself at the end of the day. You know what I mean? You can put 1,000 years into something. And if, you know, if the goal is to continue to grow themselves, that's what they're going to do. That's the priority.
I think one thing that people forget, negotiating for a new position is not just about salary, right? Because you need to have a healthy work-life balance. And so I could very well go and get another job making $30,000 more than I'm making right now. But then what's coming along with that job? Am I on call 24 hours a day? Are people checking for me on the weekends? Am I doing 10 times the work that I was doing before? Like it needs to be a balance. So you need to be negotiating your vacation time. If you have things planned before you come into this position, like have a hard line, what you are and are not willing to do. It's not always just about the number. Because quite frankly, I would take a job that pays $10,000 less if it gives me a better work-life balance. But that's just me.
Right. And then also too, just remembering to the value, your value matters, right? Yeah, a job may pay a certain amount, but if it's not what your value is, unless you are willing to accept that pay for what it is and how much it offers, also know your value. As a Black, like I said earlier, as Black women, and also too, even E said it, you know, Black women are the most educated women on the planet. Doesn't mean we're smarter than everybody else, but we are the most educated, and we have to make sure that, well, being smarter and being educated doesn't always mean the same thing. We know that. We went to school with some pretty people that are very well educated, and they're bright. Their bulb ain't that bright. So, you know, and when I say we went to school, it doesn't mean just law school. I mean just across the board, you know. And so with that being said, you know, we do have to recognize what our value is. And when you recognize your value, you know that when you're going for any kind of job, right? When you're looking at the pay gap, the biggest pay gap, I think they said for 2021 was, believe it or not, in wait staff, you know, servers at restaurants. They had the largest pay gap. And so when you're looking at, I was kind of touching on this earlier, when you're looking for jobs, it's harder because there's a whole lot of nepotism in most of these industries, right? And for those of y'all that don't know what nepotism is hiring people that you know, people that are in your family, you know, keeping a legacy within a company. And they don't necessarily have to be qualified or have the education or skill set or knowledge or whatever. They're just hiring because that's my nephew. or my, you know what I'm saying, or that's my auntie's cousin, or that's my best friend's baby daddy's friend, or whatever. I don't know. But, you know, nepotism is a problem, right? Because a lot of very qualified people lose opportunities as a result to nepotism. And when you're talking about Black women, it's very hard for Black women in certain industries to even get their foot in the door. Because A, they're Black, and B, they're women, or because A, they're women and B, they're Black. You know what I mean? You know, there's certain industries. We were having this discussion before we decided to do the podcast, and Malik had brought up a good point about things like truck drivers and pilots and things like that. Those are male dominated fields. But why are they male dominated? They always have been. People have believed that women can't do those types of jobs, even though women are very qualified. Today, you may see more women pilots. You may see a lady construction worker and lady truck drivers and things like that, but you still don't see very many of them. Like even in law, right? All of us up here are attorneys. Attorneys, women lawyers are not the majority. Let's just be clear. Black attorneys are absolutely not the majority, but you know, and Black women attorneys, you can forget it. We are like 1 or 2% of all lawyers, you know? And so it's important to recognize that these jobs and these fields can be very, very difficult to get into, not because we are not qualified, not because we don't have the knowledge or the skill set, just because nepotism or people have archaic beliefs about women or Black folks, and they think that we may not necessarily be able to do the job, so it's hard to get in there. So, you know, I think it's important to recognize that you got to work hard. Like we've all heard it, got to work 10 times harder in order to get the same thing. And it's frustrating, but we do it, and we go hard just to get to where we are. And I think that's one of the reasons why, you know, we talk about how Black women are magic, because we really, really be making things happen out of nowhere. And I think that it's important to recognize that we're gonna have to continue to go hard and continue to work hard in order to get to these things, get the things that we want, and get the things that we need. You guys can go ahead and tap in.
I want to say, when it comes to job opportunities, a lot of times people are hesitant to apply for jobs that they do not on paper qualify for. You know, you're applying for jobs, they list what the requirements are. I was telling you, before I got the job that I'm currently in, I applied for jobs. I didn't care if I fit the requirements. As long as I had the degree requirement, I was applying. I literally was applying for 3 jobs a day, every day for like 6 months until I found a job. Because you never know who you're going to run across. Maybe you might not fit into that one position, but maybe they'll like you enough where you fit into another position. So then you got a foot in the door, and that'll give you the opportunity to get into the position that you want to be. So you can't be afraid to put yourself out there. Just apply for everything and you'll fall somewhere.
Yeah.
And the best, I think over the past few years, I've not applied for any jobs. Those have come from like word of mouth, or people who I've built relationships with saying, hey, I want you to work for me. I like the work you do. And so I think that's another thing that we don't really delve into enough. We need to network, but not just with people who look like us. Like I go to breakfast with one person who's a partner of a firm. He's a white guy. I talk to him once a month. He don't have a lot of time, but I talk to him about what I got going on, what I'm thinking about. But also I tell him my accomplishments. I let him weigh in on some of the things that I'm thinking about doing. And what I'm doing is I'm building a relationship with this person, you know? And so sometimes we got to realize that our biggest advocates and sponsors someone who's in the room who can speak for you for a room that you're not in yet. So if there are no Black people or few Black people in the room that you're trying to get in, then your sponsor may not look like you. And so we have to be willing to go out of our comfort zone and meet with people and make them, you know, like Rihanna said, tell your friends to pull up. So, hey, you said, I saw on your website that you're committed to diversity. I saw you at one of the social justice events or D&I events I was at, and you said you were committed to this. I wanted to speak with you and tell you where I'm trying to go. Do you mind if we have breakfast? Hold their feet to the fire, because everybody blacked out their page when George Floyd died. But I want to see what your board of directors looks like now. I want to see what your managing staff looks like now. Did you really make a change so that we can actually have a cultural shift? But that's the conversation for another day.
No, we can have that conversation right now. We just jump right into the next subtopic about a cultural shift, right? Because, there's also social standing as Black women, what we seeing socially in America as it relates to relationships, not just in business, but also amongst the community and in other communities, and how we are often treated. One of the biggest issues that Black women have is not being heard. You know what I'm saying? You're playing musical chairs over there. It's not.
This conversation mostly about y'all. So.
It's just, it's not being heard. As a Black woman, sometimes we have to speak a lot louder just to say the one thing that we needed to say. I can say it
you
15 times. Yeah, I can say it to you 15 times and you didn't hear me. But the minute I start yelling, then all of a sudden you heard me. And it's incredibly draining and tiring to have to go through that, because, you get to a point where you're like, all right, well, you didn't hear me. You're going to have to figure it out the hard way. Or now I'm looked at like the angry Black woman because I just got finished snapping because I got sick and tired of repeating myself 16 times, right? And it's like, you didn't hear me and I'm saying this for your benefit, or I'm not going to chase you down to benefit you. But if it's going to benefit us as in a relationship, as a culture, as a business, whatever the arena is, if it's going to benefit us, just listen. Because a lot of times when you don't listen to Black people, Black women specifically, you find out at the end, you probably should have listened, because we're probably right. We have a different type of insight. We see things from a totally different lens than everybody else. And that in part, not just comes from our upbringing and our experience, but it's also too, just our perspective is just totally different based on how we are in a category of being we fall in two marginalized categories, right? At minimum, that of being a woman and that of being Black. And so when you're sitting on the outside, it's easy to see the forest past the trees. And when you're sitting there staring it straight in the face, So, I did want to make sure I mentioned that the fact that Black women often go unheard is incredibly frustrating. Like, I remember at the top of the pandemic, right? When George Floyd had died and Breonna Taylor had died and Ahmaud Arbery had died, and we're sitting
murdered.
there.
All of them were murdered.
They had all been murdered. They had all been assassinated, right? I remember just having all of these conversations on social media, because it's quarantine. People don't really have as much to do because everybody's stuck in the house watching TV, can't nobody leave, right? So you're having all these discussions with people and you kind of start seeing, you racist. I didn't know you were racist. You know what I mean? You start finding out people that you've known. I guess Chino didn't like that either. You start finding out, hey. You start finding out people have issues, and some people are open to learn and some people are open to remaining ignorant. Chino, some people are open to remaining ignorant. And so the thing about people and their ignorance is sometimes you can delve in and try to help them see the light, but when they're blissfully ignorant, you have to walk away because it's just too much. And I had so many conversations with Black women about being tired, right? I had that conversation. I don't think I had that conversation with a single Black man. I had that conversation with many Black women. With Black men, it was what they had to say was very different. What they had to say was they were infuriated. They were angry, they were frustrated, they were hurt, things like that. But with Black women, we were tired because we've been feeling that. Black women typically hold on to the emotions of everything. And so, it gets tiring.
Yeah, and I think you hit on something when you say Black women are not heard. And this goes into even something a little deeper, that we are, a leading country in technology. We have healthcare, not the best apparently, but we do have healthcare here. And one of the things that's happening is the mortality rate of women, Black women, is increasing, which means that despite improvements in technology, despite, more diversity, Black women are continuing to die during childbirth at an exponentially higher rate than other people. And one of the things that I learned from that is because I was literally, I saw it firsthand with my boss, her daughter-in-law passed away. Kira passed away in one of the best hospitals in California because she was bleeding to death, and she told the doctors that she was hurting, and everybody just wrote her off. And she was a healthy young lady. She was very smart. She was a millionaire, and she died. And then I watched the documentary on Serena Williams, and she had to advocate for herself while after just having a C-section to tell them to run a particular test because she knew that she had an embolism before, which is a blood clot, and they ran it and she had a blood clot. Had she not done that, it could have went to her heart or her brain and she could have died immediately. And so if these women experience these things, what stops us? And so one of the things, my sister just gave birth, and I called my brother-in-law and I was like, hey, there's a couple things that you need to know going into this that I don't think you're aware of. If she's in pain, they don't believe us when we say we're in pain. Make them give her something for her pain. And if they do not, this is what you do. You say, can you document that I requested that this happened and you did not do it? I guarantee you, whenever you ask that question, they're going to do whatever you want to do after that because they don't want it on their hands, especially documented that I requested this and you didn't do it. Number two, not only that, you have to look out for the child and you have to communicate with these people and make sure that they're attentive. And it's so sad that I had to have a family meeting because of what I understand legally to make sure that my sister came out alive. And that's not something that you should be worried about when you're about to give birth to a child in the United States of America in 2022.
Mm-hmm. And you know, it's interesting that you say that because my sister-in-law, her sister-in-law, she gave birth to twins, and they only had her pass one placenta. They didn't get both of them, and so they sent her home, right? And she got incredibly sick, and she went back to the doctor, and they realized that that's what happened, and it caused an infection. She just had twins. You know what I'm saying? She could have died, and you know, it's sad because you know they did a study. They did a study and they asked a bunch of, I think they were residents. I can't remember if they were actually like full-time doctors and all that, or if they were still, you know, filling their residency. But there are many people that believe that Black women don't experience pain the same as other people.
Mhm.
And
Right.
that's unfortunate because
which is why that narrative of strong Black woman is very dangerous and why we cannot continue to feed into that. I need help. I need a break. Treat me like a fragile white woman, please and thank you. Do not put more on me. Yes, I can carry the load, but why should I? I do not do that because you will kill yourself. That's why Black women have such a high rate of heart disease, stress. Like that's where it comes from. Like you can't live like that. So yeah, we got to speak up, but we also got to stop when people say, oh, you're a strong woman. You got another compliment? Because that's not one I'm taking. Like, What else you got? Because that's not a compliment.
May I jump in here? If y'all don't mind, ladies.
Please.
Yeah, so I think y'all make a great points with what you're saying, but I wanted to touch on the strong independent point or the image, right? I think you know the onus is on Black women to, you know, put forth the best image that they possibly can, right? So that strong independent woman that doesn't need a man or that's uncooperative and traits that, you know, other people don't like, I think that's something that Black women can work on personally. I know all Black women aren't, you know, uncooperative. I know all Black women aren't, you know, they don't, you know, how do I put it? They have that.
What you're trying to say is, you know,
they
all
don't
Black
feed
women
into that stigma of, you know,
Yeah.
loud, uncooperative. They don't listen. Like a lot of Black women don't fit into that, but they do have that image that they behave that way, right? And I think it's up to Black women to correct that. Like, hey, this is not our image. This is not how most Black women behave. This is not how we are, right? Because there are Black women that feed into that stereotype and feed into that stigma. And I think it's up to Black women to kind of change their image because that's, you know, I
I think that is a
a
stereotype.
lot of people do feel that way towards Black women. Or do y'all feel like they don't?
Let me ask you.
If I may, before you ask this question, that's a stereotype, right? And the category of people who are stereotyped, it's not upon them to change the stereotype. It's society's responsibility to stop giving into that stereotype. As a Black woman, I do not have to prove to you that I am loud and independent or whatever else the stereotypes are. That's not my job to disprove that. Right. It's society's responsibility to stop believing that. We are all individual people. I'm different than Sam. I'm different than Adrianette. We are not one and the same. Please do not typecast us.
Well, hold on. Let me ask this question then, though, because Mark, to Malik's point too, like if the image is something that maybe some women may not be putting out, because I think what we're seeing here is there's different categories of women, of course, like you said, in all branches, right? But I think the question then becomes, if there's only being, and this goes for the male side as well, if there's only being a certain type of image that's being portrayed, is it then upon, you know what I'm saying, upon the other individuals that's within that stereotype, that would be stereotyped within that category to show that, no, that's not that? And I think, Mikal, you taking a position of saying that, no, it's not my job to show y'all that just what y'all see on TV isn't real. It's just my job to go about my day. Versus, I kind of think, like to Malik's point, to a degree, I think you do have to step up and say, you know what? No, this is what y'all seeing. That's not real. You know what I'm saying? Like that's not the real image of a typical Black woman. And let me show y'all why. Or let me tell y'all why.
But I don't have to say that because my actions exhibit that.
Well, Mikal, you're speaking from an individual standpoint.
No, but
okay. But I'm speaking from Black women.
That's going to be the image that's uphill. That's all I want to say.
Hold on for a second.
Because
for men, hold on for a second, Malik. For men,
okay, go ahead.
Is it a Black man's job to tell society I'm not a robber or a killer? No, it's not.
Actually,
no, it's not.
Can I answer that, Sam?
Hold on. Let me finish what I'm saying. Okay. You can answer it, you can respond when I'm done. But it's not a Black man's job to tell society that I don't engage in that behavior. It's a Black man's job to not engage in that behavior and for society to see it. That's it. I don't have to go counter. Think about it like this. I'm a criminal defense attorney. My job is to represent my client. My client does not have to prove that he's innocent. It's the state's job to prove that, hey, it's the state's job to prove that he's guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. You understand? So all he has to do, he or she has to do is sit there while I defend them. You see what I'm saying? So just like a Black man or Black woman, you don't have to go out and say and prove to the world that you're not what the world is saying that you are. Instead, what you do is you go out and you live your life and allow for others to see it. Right?
I think guys, we're being a little too optimistic in that regards, because I feel like when you look at it, the world's not going to want to take in your image, the positive image. They've shown you that they're not looking to take the positive image or display the positive image. So that's why I feel like, it is behooving upon you to live your life a certain type of way, but I also feel like you have to take it a little further step. I don't think you got to go convince people of things, but I do think that you need to display that. I do think you need to share that. I do think you need to go ahead and mentor that, and also, go against it when you see some foolishness and say, you know what, that's not that. That's not what this is. We're not going to accept that you're putting us in these type of boxes, so that they can understand that, no, we're not going along with what you see on the news. No, we're not going along with what you see in viral clips. We're telling you that this is what it is. And then that way, there's a voice that's showing that, no, we weren't compliant by just sitting there, turning our head and acting like we didn't know what was going on.
Okay, I agree with Everett, and let me tell you why on some points. Number one, I think, and I'm gonna bring it back to something that y'all can relate to. They say Black men are deadbeat dads. Okay, so maybe it's up to you to highlight the time that you spend with your kids. You know what I'm saying? So people can see another side of what the media is showing, and social media makes that very easy. And so one of the things we can do is make us more visible in that positive light. That's helpful. But also, there is nothing you can do to change someone's mind who is committed to misunderstanding who you are. And I think that's what Mikhail is saying, that it is a segment of society who's committed to making sure that people see Black women in a certain light. And I'll give you an example. There was an incident at work that was not my issue. The judge ordered something to happen. We got to the place. The other party was supposed to do something. They did not do what they were supposed to do. And I said, hey, let's end the meeting. We'll reconvene when you have what the judge ordered you to have so we can move forward. I was then called uncooperative. I was then called difficult to work with, unfriendly, because I'm not here to be your friend. I'm an attorney, number one. So I'm not here to be your friend. I'm here to advocate for my client. And what you're doing is not in their best interest, and it's against court order. And so it's not my fault that you're not prepared today. But because I said that, now it's the stereotype where I'm uncooperative, I'm hard to work with. And I also hear some of my colleagues, they'll say, oh, I'm dating this spicy Latino. Spicy Latino just means you loud and have an attitude. Okay, but they don't found a cute word for other cultures and how they express themselves. But for Black people, we loud, and Black women, we loud and angry. White, Latino women apparently, spicy. I can be spicy too. Why I gotta be, loud and unfriendly?
Right. And what I was gonna say was, I think that what you're suggesting is a little bit different from what I was saying, right? What I was saying is, it's one thing to offer correction in the presence of somebody providing the wrong image. It's just not our job to go out and exhaust ourselves with trying to correct the image. You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
So if that answers your question, Malik, like.
Well, I mean, my pushback is, I feel like, though, from a Black man's perspective, because let me not speak for Black women, it's my job to uphold a positive image of a Black man, right? Because reputation is very important. Like when you're networking with other men, how your peers view you, that stuff is important, right? And you're still representing the Black community, especially in the United States, right? We have a very segregated society. The United States is still pretty racist. So I think it's important as a group, whether you're a Black man, Black woman, just as a group, to represent Black people, whether you're Black man, Black woman, to uphold a positive, good image of the community, because other groups do view us in a negative light. So if you don't give them any water in the bucket or anything to stand on, that is beneficial to you as an individual and to us as a group. Because the better the group does, the better you will do as an individual as well. So it's very important to uphold a positive image, just not only for yourself, but for others as well, because we need to start building up these communities. I know I'm kind of getting into a much deeper thing here, but image is important. It's like, okay, I may be doing good individually. I may not be sagging my pants, but if 10, 20, 100 Black men are sagging their pants or into criminal activity, that's negative upon me, because a person who doesn't know me is going to look at me like, oh, you're just like the rest of those groups doing all that other stuff. And I'm not even part of that. So,
right.
So
I think
helping to change the image of Black people is a benefit to us all. So,
but I think that goes into two things. It goes into one of the things that Adrianette said, like, you can't force somebody who already has their mind made up about you to change their mind, right? There's people that absolutely believe that all Black men are monsters, period. There's nothing you can do about it. Full stop. That's it. If they're hell bent on, and that's what I was talking about too, when I was talking about at the top of the pandemic, when you start seeing after after Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor.
You just don't want to feed into those misconceptions.
No, you don't. But at the same time, like, if you think that there's an opportunity there for you to educate somebody, right, so that they're not looking at you or other people like you with this negative image, you try to take that opportunity. Many Black women were exhausted in that time because why? We were doing that so much. And that's when you learn, you know what? This person is hell bent on believing the worst in people that look like me. So if they're hell bent on believing the worst in people that look like me, I'm gonna leave them where they're at, because I'm not gonna continue to go in this circle with them. It's a waste of my energy. And they have no intentions on changing their mind. Now, there are people that may have questions, and the answers that you give may open their mind. Those are the people you might want to give those gems to, because you're casting your pearl. The other people are swine. You're casting your pearls onto swine. in those other situations. But when people are open, then they're open, and that's how you grow, and you create these different types of relationships with people, and they grow, because it's for their edification, right? You already know what it feels like to be a Black person. You already know what it feels like to be a Black woman. So, you are able to enlighten somebody in that, when you have the opportunity to help them change the image of what it is to be a Black person in their mind. But there's some people there's nothing you can do about it, which goes to what Everett was saying, and why I was saying, it's one thing if you're presented with the opportunity, but if you are spending your time just going around all over town, just trying to change people's minds, it's almost a useless waste of time, because everybody is not open to that. And so, you got to be willing to feed people who are hungry. You can't just be trying to force feed people with their mouth closed.
If I may, to Malik's question, I think it is just as much the responsibility of the Black man as it is the Black woman. Because if you're in a room and somebody says, oh, she's an angry Black woman, I think it's your responsibility to say, no, she's not. You're misunderstanding her. You're not paying attention to the fact that she said what she said, and you're not listening. You're not paying attention to the fact that she's tired because she's been doing this and she's getting the same response and nobody's listening to her. So it's not just women's responsibility alone as a Black woman to, get rid of those stereotypes. Like, as a Black man, you should feel that you have that same obligation. The onus should not just be on Black women.
And I think that goes to protection, right? So, like, there's a whole campaign about protecting Black women, right? And what does that mean? It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to sit there and take a bullet for her, but just what Mikhail said, that is a form of protection. She's trying to explain something, she's not being heard, and to stand up for her and say, hey, can you listen to her for a second? That is a form of protection, because it takes so much out of her spirit to have to continue to repeat herself about something, especially when it's incredibly important. And I think that we as a diaspora should be trying to define what that word protection means, because what protection means for a female is going to be very different from what it means for a man. How women can protect men is so different from how men protect women, and especially amongst Black folks. And we have to find better ways to do it, right? Black men often feel unprotected by Black women, but Black women are the biggest fighters for Black men, right? But there's different ways that Black women can protect the Black man. When you take with the Will and Jada situation, without digging into the details and talking about who was wrong and who was right, Jada could have easily said, Will, don't do that. She could have easily said it. I don't think she did. When I saw the angle of the video, she didn't. She could have said something to him later about it. That might have been all fine and good, but at that point, the incident had already occurred. It's important to do that. Like, I had right after George Floyd was murdered, a friend of mine had said something really crazy. Rest in peace. He just passed. I just found out he passed away today, but he had said something really crazy on my timeline. And I deleted his comment, but I explained to him why. And you don't have to give anybody an explanation, but I gave him this explanation to protect him, right? He had said something crazy about police and, running down on police or something off the wall. And I said to him, that's not the right response. Violence isn't the answer. And not only is that something I don't want on my timeline, I don't want it to look like I'm advocating that type of behavior, right? But you shouldn't, because even if you go on your own timeline and you say that, you're putting another target on your back, and you as a Black man don't need another target on your back, right? And that was how I offered him correction and protection at the same time. I did it in a private way. He received it, and he changed the way he went about doing things. And he said, thank you, because he appreciated that. And he was also mature enough to admit that he was just being very emotional in the moment. And other people that don't know him may not have been able to recognize that that's in fact what was going on. So I think it's important, that we give protection, but also too, we don't feel protected, right? Because you have like you were talking about a few minutes ago, Malik, the image of the Black woman. Because Black women have this image of being combative and loud and disrespectful and this and that and hard to deal with and whatever. All of that foolishness, right? As opposed to treating an individual as an individual. because Black women are grouped in these horrible stereotypical categories, right? They're left there unprotected. And so it's like, she got it. She know how to figure it out. She can get it herself. She's an independent Black woman, ain't she? She can do it on her own, as opposed to recognizing maybe that woman is hurt. Maybe that woman needs help. Maybe that woman needs somebody to say, no, you don't got it. I got it. You see what I'm saying? And so sometimes that's what needs to happen. And a lot of times it doesn't. Instead, it's like, well, fine, if that's how you want to be.
Well, I have a question for you on that, Sam. But before I ask you why, because I want to ask you why doesn't that happen? And then I want to touch on Mikhail's point of how the onus should be on both a Black man and a Black woman to, portray that positive image in the community. I think from a Black man standpoint, we're supposed to be more of a supportive role. And the example you kind of gave leads into protection, like Sam was saying. But at the end of the day, you're a Black woman, right? I can't really tell you, like, I can't control you on how you're going to behave. That image is up to yourself, right? It's up to Black women, because that's what they're putting out there. I can support them, tell them this is what you should do, or maybe can help. But at the end of the day, it's up to you as Black women to determine what you guys want to put out there as a group. Like, on average, right? Every person's individual as an individual, but every group is known for certain things, right? Like, if you think about Jewish people, what do you think about? Like, when you think about Asian people, what do you think about? Maybe Nigerians, what do you think about? Like, all groups of people have different things that people think about initially. And that's what I'm talking about, like the reputation, right? The reputation of Black women is a certain way, and people view them a certain way on average. You may be rich, you may be poor, you may be middle class, it doesn't matter your social status, but on average, this is how they're going to view you, just as a Black woman without even knowing you. And that's really what I'm getting at there. And Black men, they could do a little bit better job supporting, of course, but I think that kind of goes into the Black man, Black woman relations and how that's kind of fractured and how that's divided. And I think that kind of will lead us to reasons why we're kind of not doing so well on that, because I really strongly believe that Black men and Black women are as connected as they should be in terms of their relationships. I think that could be better. And we see evidence of that, right? Through the marriage rates, the divorce rates, the single parents. So that's my evidence towards that. But Sam, I had that question for you. Why do you think there's that lack of support on that issue that you just?
I think fear is a part of it. I think there's a level of fear and intimidation, not necessarily that a Black woman is intimidated, but the ramifications that can come with putting your foot down as a man, right? Because if you're dealing with somebody who is so hurt, everybody knows that the police can be used as a weapon, especially against Black men. So if you have a Black woman who is moving a particular kind of way, you don't want the police to get involved one way or another. It can be something simple, right? Oh, young lady, maybe you should smile. Oh, he touched me. Like, whoa, I didn't touch you. I just said smile. You see what I'm saying? You don't know where that's going to go, how that could take a wild turn. And so a lot of times I think fear is there. I think also too, the relationships that Black men have with their mothers. This is not a psychology thing. This is just my own opinion. A lot of times Black men are so reliant upon their mothers that when they come across other Black women that have traits that remind them of their mother, they're more inclined to fall in line as opposed to put their foot down, because they feel like, I got to do what I'm told, or I got to fall back and respect what the lady says. And it's like, yeah, you can fall back and respect what a lady says. But if I'm carrying my groceries and I'm struggling and you say, do you need some help? And I say, no, I got this. I'm a strong Black woman. Ma'am, give me some of them groceries. You see what I'm saying? I'm not about to steal your food. I'm helping you. I'm not going to break into your house later. I'm helping you. I'll even bring it to the corner if that makes you feel more safe. Whatever makes you feel safe, but I'm going to help you with this. You see what I'm saying? And so I think
that's the other thing is they need to listen. If you don't want help show groceries from a stranger,
right,
that's different. And so I think I have a different view on this. And I tell people this all the time. Y'all saying that Black men are not there. That ain't my reality. that is not my whole life. Has been probably a lot of my success is my grandfather, my father, my brothers, who do everything for me. Anything I need done is done. It's not a question about it. Even the Black people in my life who are my friends. So I don't know what we get. Again, I don't know where we getting this from, that is some, break in the relationship between Black men and Black women, because I just don't think that's true. I think that white men can be just as notorious, and I've seen it because of the type of law I practice, as Black, when mistreating people. And so we just highlight the mistreatment of Black men and Black women. And also there are not as many Black men who are free roaming the streets. So it's easier to, put this information out there because it's such a condensed population. But I'm sorry, that's not my story. Even in relationships that have not worked out, most of the people, I'm still cool with them. They still supportive. They still do anything they can for me. So I can't speak to that, Malik. I'm sorry.
Oh, well, yeah, you may not be able to speak to it individually, but
I know a lot of other people who feel the same way.
Yeah, but when you look at some of the statistics, like I feel like our relationships aren't successful, right? When you look at the marriage rates, right?
But the marriage rate among all populations is
what I'm saying is it's not just Black people.
And then actually statistically
there
are more
country.
It's more two-parent households in the United States now than there was 20 years ago. So we're actually doing a better job. We may be prolonging till we decide to get married, but those relationships are seeming to stay together longer. So there are more two-parent homes now than there were before. So I don't know where these statistics are coming from that you're saying that
it's coming from blackdemographics.com, statistics by Black people for Black people, and it's showing that half of the women that get married, Black women only get married at 25% of all the people who are eligible to get married, and half of that gets divorced. So there's a fracture within that relationship, and they don't even get divorced at 50%, because the average is like 50%, and like another percentage of that gets divorced, like maybe like another third of that gets divorced. But Black women are at 50% divorce rate, and they only marry at about 25-26%. So that other 75% is single, probably around the single parent households, like 70% of single parents, right? So that's a high rate.
I mean, it is a high rate. I agree that it's a high rate, Malik, but at the same time,
devastating to the Black community, Black wealth,
wait a second.
relationships.
Hold on, let me say something for a second.
Go ahead.
They don't, but those statistics don't outline who wants to get married, right? Because not just because it's a woman don't mean she want to get married. All Black women don't want to get married. Some Black women would rather cohabitate. You see what I'm saying? That's just the fact. It doesn't mean that that's true for everybody. It doesn't even mean that it's true for the majority, because I don't know how many more people would rather cohabitate than get married, but there are definitely people out there that would rather do that and don't want to get married and don't see themselves getting married. So I do think that also should be taken into consideration. But as far as the relationships and stuff go between Black men and Black women, I think a lot of it is that we don't listen to each other, right? Black women are constantly saying what they think and how they feel, and men don't want to hear it. And then when men say what they want and how they feel, women don't want to hear it. So we just run into this cycle of and that I really believe that, to answer your question, that's what the disconnect is. We're not listening to each other. And so and that goes to the thing that I said earlier, especially as being a Black woman, we are often not heard, not by our men, and not by people that are outside of our diaspora. We are often not heard. And so it gets to be incredibly frustrating when we run into those scenarios on a constant basis, right? And then you start getting combative, you start becoming more independent, you start becoming more uncooperative and disagreeable. And it's not true for all Black women, but then that's one of the reasons why you see that happening more and more often, because they're often not heard, right? Like when people are not heard, they tend to act out, right? And so it's important to recognize that that's where that comes from. And as it relates to image, one of the things I wanted to also mention was how we're portrayed on TV, right? I think that, how the way that our image is portrayed on TV, Black women have always been objectified, right? We have been objectified since we were brought into this country. when we were put up there on the auction block, they would look at our bodies. Then we were told that our bodies were ugly. Now you got everybody trying to look like us, trying to get hair like us, their skin like ours, their noses like ours, their lips, their booty, their whole body, the whole situation, right? Because people have recognized how magical Black, it's messed up that you tear somebody down and then try to emulate them, right? And I think that, you know, once Black women are able to embrace the love that they have for the beauty within them, it'll be easier for us to be able to change our image, both physically and you know, socially, right? Because when you look at, like, I sent you guys a clip that Black women all over the world bleach their skin. Not all Black women, but there is a fraction of Black women that do that. Why? Because they don't feel that they're dark. The melanin, the amount of melanin that they have in their skin is beautiful, and it is. It's absolutely beautiful, right? Women have done all kinds of things with their hair. Why? Because we've been told for centuries that our hair is ugly, but it's not. They literally just had to pass legislation called the Crown Act, just so Black people can wear their hair how it naturally grows out of their head to work. Like, how ridiculous is that? You know, and I think that plight, especially with hair, has been much more of an issue for women than it has for men, right? Men have the ability to cut their hair off and nobody should have anything to say about it. But when women do, you know, a woman's hair is supposed to be her crown and glory. And so, you know, although there are women, oh, it's just hair, whatever, but we are the ones that walk around with it. We're the ones that have to learn how to do it and figure out what we want to do with it and all that, because it's a part of who we are. And it's part of how we represent who we are. You know, it's a part of that stamp. When you think of Samantha, you might think, oh, the girl with the big hair, or the girl with the long hair, or the girl with this kind of hair, or whatever. You might. You know, you might not. You might think the girl with the funny accent from Boston. You might think whatever. I don't know. But hair is definitely an image that's ingrained in people's brains. And it's something that has affected women throughout history. You know, we've even gone around, you know, this colorism, and we've gone around and we've, you know, belittled each other and not uplifted one another. And I think, you know, as a solution to some of these things, especially socially, it comes from empowering each other and loving on one another, because we are so quick to say, oh yeah, Black empowerment, Black girl magic, but I can't look at another female longer than 3 seconds before she started looking like, why is she looking at me? What is she looking at? Like, thinking I might have something negative to say, and I could be looking at her thinking, oh my God, she's absolutely beautiful. You see what I'm saying? Or, oh my goodness, I think that was a very, very smart thing to say. Or I think that, you know, you're incredibly intelligent, or I think that you're dope, just in general. And I think that we have to find ways to continue to encourage and empower one another so that we can continue to grow our image and can continue to be magic and be beautiful and be amazing, right? Because we are amazing. And I think that we just have to tap into it and continue to encourage one another.
Right. Anybody else? Before we kind of get more into the solutions, like Sam was saying. Well, yeah, so some of those solutions I'm thinking about is Adrianette said one good thing about the whole job situation was like networking, communicating about your salary, not making it secret. I like that idea. That's tremendous. I think that really can help. Also, those conferences you mentioned, and Black women coming together, networking, growing, and creating something together, right? To where they can kind of combat some of these issues with the wage gap and some of the issues with the job opportunities. I like that idea. As far as the social plight goes, though, I think changing the image, right? Working on having a better positive image in the community of Black women, so Black women can have a better reputation. Like, they're not just this loud group of people. I think they've made strides with that. Don't get me wrong. Like, especially with the education, getting the most degrees in the country for their population, most educated, right? I think that's a good look. I think therapy, if you need therapy, that's good. Holding yourself accountable and others accountable when they do things that damage the group. and display inappropriate behaviors. I think that's a good thing to do as Black women. And I think Black men can do that too, point out anything that they're doing wrong and try to correct them when possible. And
In a loving way, though.
Excuse me?
Gotta be in a loving way, because nobody's gonna receive it if you're just out there being like, you being loud. Like, nobody
Yeah,
wants to-
yeah. It's a way you have to talk to them and tell them, but Black women have to receive it too. Like, a Black man has to talk to them in a loving way, positive way, but Black women also have to receive it. It's not always has to be that auto defense system where, oh, a Black man's trying to attack me, he's trying to bring me down, he's not looking out for my best interest. It doesn't have to be that situation. It can come from a loving way. Like Adrienne says, like the men in her life are positive and help her, whether they're friends or family or whatever. So her, like the people she's interacted with, she's had a positive experience, right? So more women need to be more positive about their interactions with Black men and just the community and people, period. But I understand why, due to trauma, historical situations. So I understand that, but I think that could help too, as well. And then businesses, right? I think, I think Black men, Black women starting up businesses, owning and controlling some more things could definitely help some of the situations as well. So those are some of the solutions that I could think of off the top of my head. I don't want to keep going on and on.
One solution I wanted to add real quick before you guys, the rest of you guys go into yours, is a safe space, right? We have to be able to have a safe space where we can talk about things, whether that be counseling, like Malik suggested, whether because like I know I'm on a monthly Zoom where I go and I talk to a bunch of other women who, many of them are attorneys, but a number of them have other jobs as well. We talk about, it's a safe space, and we just talk about a lot of the things that are bothering us, and we see how we can relate with one another. And it helps, it helps you to recognize that you're not alone in the things that you're going through. And I think that it's empowering and it's encouraging to know that you're not the only one. And so having a safe space to be able to talk about things, I think, is also important.
I think a really good solution is to start around you, because that's going to be the most impact you can make. That's the most effective. And for instance, my brother, one of the things I did with him a long time ago, he was a parent, and he was single, and I would he wasn't up to the point, he was just kind of learning. But I remember I would every Father's Day, I would write him a card about how, what it looked like to be a good father, and the traits and characters that he had that made him a good father, and the things that I look forward to seeing him grow from in 5, 10, 15 years. And so you have to really speak positive into people. And he really took those words, because he is an amazing father now, and so the people around you, sometimes they get the worst of us when they really should get the best of us, so on a personal level. But also, when we talk about the job situation, hold people accountable. If they say they're into diversity, what do your board of directors look like? How have your hiring practices changed? How's your company culture shifted to focus on this? So just asking those questions, and those are things you should ask at the interview, and not being afraid to not take a job, because where you work and how you feel about showing up there every day is so important. So that would be my kind of takeaway.
For me, I would just say that in terms of solutions, like Adrienne said, it really does start around you. So be the interviewer who stopped the interview and called the girl on the phone and say, hey, you're undervaluing yourself. Be the person where you got a group of kids in your neighborhood, talk to them, encourage them, be a mentor to people. And just on a wider basis, I think we as humans, regardless of what race, gender, nationality, whatever it may be, we just need to be more kind and compassionate and willing to listen to others and get their input, because it's okay to have a seat at the table, but if we're not listening to the people that surround us, it's not going to make any difference. So inclusion is fine, but we also need to hear what the people are saying and really take it into consideration.
For me, I think one of the solutions that we can have is, again, for on the male side of the game is just understanding, essentially understanding, you know, the struggles that someone listening to women in these spaces, like Sam just said, so that we understand some of the struggles in which they may be facing currently in society, so that we can, one, just listen to hear, you know, not listening to respond. I know that's a big thing that I've been always working on. And I know this for like most men, we listen to try to like figure out, okay, what's the issue? How can we make something happen? But for one, just to listen to just hear for one. The second thing that I would say would be to then once we do hear, actively hear, listen, you know, be there for them, be present. And then after that, I think, you know, one of the things that we can do is like what Kyle mentioned earlier, would be to be an advocate. When there's moments or there's spaces in which we see that there's opportunity for us to make corrections, when we see that, you know, that there's been mischaracterizations of Black women, it'll be behooving upon us to make sure that we do kind of make those corrections when we're in those spaces. The next thing that I think that we would do is again encourage communication, encourage collaboration with like-minded individuals, and I think that's one of the things that I feel like, you know, we're kind of talking about, but we're kind of missing, because there's going to be some people who get it to the point, like you said, when you talk about trying to change the minds of the races, but it also goes within changing the minds of individuals within your own within their own community. There's some people who just won't get the message, who just don't understand why they should even care what other people think about what they look like, why they should even care about. It's so deep, because I feel like, you know, you almost have to go into why they should, one, care about themselves. And then into that, then you go into why, you know what I'm saying, when you see someone else, you will see an image of yourself. So that's why you want to make sure that, you know what I'm saying, that one, that you care about yourself, you carry yourself a certain type of way. Then also you tell somebody else to teach them to love themselves, because you might see them doing something that might be damaging to not only just their image, but also to just the psyche, you know, just the mindset of feeling like, you know, everybody has to feel like they're on their own. Everybody has to feel like they have to get it for themselves. And that doesn't necessarily need to be the mindset. I think we should be able to move towards a place where we can kind of work with other like-minded individuals and see someone to say like, hey, you know what, I'm willing to help you, even if it's not necessarily net and gaining anything for me per se, just because I want to see you in it, just because I want to see you grow, just because I want to see you in certain positions. And to Ned's point, I think there are people that's in this world that's like that. You just have to be able to find that. And I know a lot of times that's very challenging, because, you know, you don't necessarily know where those spaces are. You don't necessarily know maybe how to get in contact with other individuals. But with us having the internet, with us being able to, you know, research and do things and have more access to certain individuals, like things like, you know, Zoom and other features, there's opportunities and ways that we can maybe chill. You know, not too long ago that you couldn't even call long distance without it being an extra charge, you know, from calling someone in another state. So, you know, we have different advancements in society and technology that allows us to be in communication, even if we're not necessarily in the same area or country. I think that's some of the things that we need to work on. And I think we need to teach that to our peers, so that we know, like, coming up, hey, get you a good mentor, find you somebody that you can respect, find you somebody that has some of the things going on that you would like to get to, and talk with them. Whether it's, like you said, if you can't find somebody within your community that you can, find somebody that's at least willing to talk to you about it, even if they're outside of your community. Because again, a lot of times those individuals are in those spaces that you're trying to get to. And so, and if they're at least willing to have a conversation with you, they may be willing to help you as well. So, I'm sorry, guys, that's my dog. Thank you for the most.
Okay, it's Doggy Day on Kind of Voice podcast.
So, what I would say with that is, though, again, it's just that, you know, being mindful of like your, you know, your surroundings and your environments with that, in that regards. And then the next thing that I would say, lastly too, is that we have to work with each other. We have to be able to see within each other that if we have people who have, you know, the right mindset, the right mentality, the right goals, that's trying to move in the right direction, that we work with them, and that we try to build with them, and that we try to, you know what I'm saying, understand what they may be going through and how we can also affect that. So those are some of the things that I think that we could do as solutions to try to help, you know, help women that's coming in these blighted positions in society, to change some of the imaging. And real quickly, I just wanted to go into some of our Black Business of the Month. This month we are doing the Marathon clothing line. It's a clothing brand that was created by one of my favorite artists, Nipsey Hussle. And so you guys can check them out. We have the website and everything posted online as or posted up here shortly. So you guys can check out their website. Really nice clothing based out of Los Angeles. And then lastly, I want to also go ahead and hit you guys with the book of the month. And it is Why Should White Guys Have All the Fun by Reginald Lewis. Another impactful book that touched on a lot of different subject matters. I just want to briefly give you guys a little outline from some of the information that they had in that storyline as well, or in that book. So you guys just give me 1 second, and I'll be able to pull that up here shortly. Okay. Yeah, that's all I have.
It's gonna get pulled up. Yeah, it'll show at the end.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
I got you guys for the motivational minute. This is a quote by Jane Goodall. What you do makes a difference, and you have to decide what kind of difference you want to make. So I think that quote speaks to our topic today about the plight of Black women. I think what they do does make a difference, and it's up to Black women and just the Black community period to help with the plight of Black women, because no other group's going to really look out for us exclusively, right? They're going to want their own benefits. So I think it's up to us as Black people and the Black women here today and Black women all over the world to help better all the areas of activity for Black women and Black people, because when Black women win, I think Black men win as well. So I think that quote really speaks to what we're discussing today.
Absolutely. We want to thank you guys for tapping in, and thank you to our guests for showing up and showing out. Thank you so much,
you guys,
Macau, for coming and participating in our discussion about the plight of the Black woman. We really, really love you all and appreciate you guys so very much. And I know I, for one, do, because sometimes, being the only estrogen in a room full of testosterone can be a little much. So I wanted to again say thank you guys. Our social media is going to be posted up right here at the end there. So you guys make sure you like, share, subscribe, and all that good stuff. And also, too, make sure you check us out on Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. on Instagram for our What's Up Wednesday segment. So that's pretty much it. Thanks again. We love y'all. Like, share, subscribe, tell a friend, all that good stuff. All right. Bye, y'all.
See y'all. Peace.
Bye.